Imagine that there's an election coming up in your town. Candidates are campaigning, there are posters and ads everywhere. Before the election day, one of the candidates approaches you and offers you some cash in return for your vote. What would you do? Would you accept the money? And if you accept, would you actually vote for this candidate or would you vote for the competitor even after taking the cash? Now think also about this. What if you knew that other people around you were also being offered cash for their votes and accepted it? Would this change your willingness to cooperate within your community after the election? These questions lie at the heart of an experimental paper by Guerra and Justesen, published in Public Choice in 2022, titled Vote Buying and Redistribution. First of all, let's start with a definition. What is vote buying? In simple terms, vote buying is when political parties or candidates offer money, goods, or favors to voters in exchange for their vote or support on election day. It's a common tactic in distributive politics, where resources are strategically allocated to influence the outcome of an election. Vote buying can take different forms, from direct cash payments to gifts, or even promises of personal benefits. In theory, the secret ballot is supposed to militate against the use of vote buying, because it allows voters to conceal their vote choice from candidates that employ clientelist strategies. However, evidence from all around the world suggests that vote buying is instead a pervasive practice, even in context with ballot secrecy. And this is particularly true in developing countries and some countries in Africa, such as Kenya, Uganda, and Benin. Now, this complex phenomenon has been widely studied in the economic and political science literature. Researchers have looked into various dimensions of this practice. For example, who are the typical targets of vote buying? Answer: mostly poor people from disadvantaged areas. But one question remained unanswered. What about the effect of vote buying on voters' demand for redistribution and public goods provision? Guerra and Justesen took it on and set out an experiment to answer two main questions. First, does vote buying affect voters' behavior? And does ballot secrecy change these effects? They conducted a lab experiment in Kenya, where vote buying is a common strategy during election. In collaboration with the Busara Center for Behavioral Economics in Nairobi, participants were recruited from the Kibera area, the largest and poorest slum in Africa, ensuring a realistic context for examining vote buying behaviors. Now, the experimental design. Participants during the lab experiment were randomly divided into two groups, the poor and the rich. Then they were asked to participate in two main economic games, a candidate choice game and a standard public good games. Let's focus on the candidate choice game, where participants acted as voters and had to choose between two political candidates, both simulated by the computer. The two candidates, let's call them A and B, differ in the way they would redistribute resources from a common pool if elected. Candidate A promised fair, equal redistribution to everyone. Candidate B instead used or waste some resources from the common pool to offer money to some participants, poor participants, in exchange for votes. The targeted voters could accept or reject the offer. Now, if accept, the money would immediately be transferred into their individual earnings. If reject, the money will come back to the common pool of candidate B and redistributed to the whole community. In both cases, these things and decisions happen before the election and independently of the final vote. There were two identical rounds of elections under two different conditions: secret ballots, where votes were anonymous, and open ballots, where instead each individual vote was visible to anyone. Now, two important notes. First, vote buying offers were common knowledge. This means that all subjects were informed from the very beginning that candidate B would have offered some money to some participants. Second note, at the end of each round, participants received information about the final number of votes for each candidate, the winning candidate, and their own earnings. Crucially, in the vote buying treatments, participants also received information about the percentage of individuals who accepted or rejected the offer from candidate B. Now, question for you. Which candidate would you vote for? The optimal choice from economic theory here will be to vote for candidate A. If candidate B offered you some money, take it, but then vote for candidate A for a fair redistribution. Now let's see if the participants of this experiment acted as predicted. The results. Vote buying successfully attracted votes from those who accepted money. But it also led to backlash from others. So voters who did not receive any offer, or even those voters who received an offer but rejected it, punished candidate B by voting for the competitor. Second result. Candidates using vote buying strategies, so candidate B, were viewed more negatively. They were often rated lower on leadership, competence, and honesty. Third result is the effect on public goods, so on people's willingness to contribute to public goods that are things that benefit the whole community, like shared infrastructure of services. The experiment showed that when ballots were not secret, people were less willing to contribute to these public projects. So in a way, this lack of privacy made them feel less motivated to invest in community resources. Instead, the act of vote buying itself didn't significantly decrease contributions to the public good. So, what's the main takeaway from this research? Well, candidates who rely on vote buying may gain a few votes, but they risk harming their reputation and, most importantly, eroding trust and cooperation within the community after the election. So what's next? Future research can dig into other contexts and look at different forms of political clientelism. For example, moving from vote buying to turnout buying. So there's so much more to learn about the real impact of vote buying. Here we are just at the starting line, and there's a long road ahead.